Good evening, universe. Tonight I'm going to be talking all about all the books that I read in October and November. I don't read super quickly, so I figure sticking 2 month wrap-ups together is the better way to do it. The first book that I read in October was The Last Graduate by Noami Novik. This was definitely one of my most anticipated reads of the year from when I read Deadly Education earlier this year. If you don't know, The Last Graduate is book 2 in the Scholomance series by Noami Novik. Basically, what the Scholomance series is about is this magical school called the Scholomance that is set up for young mages who haven't practiced their abilities enough to fight off the monsters, which are called Maleficaria, out in the wider world. So this school exists so that they have a chance to learn how to use their magical abilities enough to fight off the Maleficaria, who will come after them to try and eat them for the mana, the magical power that they generate. Unfortunately, the school is very deadly, because even though they have all these wards and protections and stuff like that, monsters still get in and still try to kill the students. Plus, the students are very desperate, so a lot of times they will even kill each other. They might starve, that sort of thing. The school is just very deadly, but you still have better chances in the school than you do not in the school. So this follows Elle, our main character, who unfortunately kind of has like a whole bunch of magical power, but her affinity is like destruction magic, like evil overlord type magic. So like little spells don't really work for her, which is very inconvenient. And also her spells always use up a huge amount of mana, which means that she has to work extra hard to get the mana to do any of those spells. And basically how you get mana in this series is by doing something arduous. So for her, she really hates exercising. So a lot of times she'll do some kind of workout and she'll be so annoyed about it that she will have gained enough mana to store and then use for her spells at another time. So this is going to include spoilers for the first book because it kind of explains what happens so that I can describe what goes on in the second book. So if you haven't read the first book yet and you want to, skip ahead to the next book. So in book 2, The Last Graduate, we pick up where we left off, like exactly where we left off. After the previous seniors graduated, there's a new influx of students, and one of the students brings her a note from her mother, and the note says, "Whatever you do, stay away from Orion Lake." And this is obviously a problem because he has become an extremely good friend. So the second book continues to build their friendship out. It builds out more of the friendships, which is one of the things that I felt was lacking in book 1. So I really enjoyed that, as it kind of gives more depth to the other girls in the school. It also goes into these sort of school-wide consequences that come about because of what they did in the first book with the graduation hall. I really enjoyed The Last Graduate. I saw on Goodreads that some people marked it as very slow or a huge disappointment. I really liked it. I like school-y type stuff, so it definitely did follow her a little bit more closely in like classes and things like that, but I had no problem with that, especially because of the greater depth given to some of the characters. The ending was amazing and such a crazy cliffhanger, and I can't wait to see where book 3 goes. So after that, I read Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. You may know her from the Caraval series, which follows 2 sisters going through like this magical circus and dealing with this magical deck of basically like tarot cards. Except they're like specific to the world, so they're called Decks of Destiny. Anyway, that's not what this book is about. It's set in the same world as Caraval, but it follows a different character, although we do get some cameos from characters from that trilogy. One of the major characters in this book is actually Jax, the Prince of Hearts. So if you've read Caraval and you know Jax, then you are probably really excited about this. I was not a super big fan of Jax, so I wasn't super excited about it, although I was was interested in going into more of the lore and the world building. So I was excited about his presence for that reason. But the main character is actually Evangeline Fox, who is a young woman who has just had her heart broken because the person that she was with, her boyfriend essentially, her lover, he is about to be married to Evangeline's stepsister Marisol. So Evangeline kicks off this whole story by going to a temple dedicated to the Prince of Hearts and asking for help. And she actually meets him there. This is in the first chapter or two, so no spoilers, but he meets her there. He kind of warns her yeah, it's not a good idea to make a deal with the fate, but she does it anyway because she's desperate. What the deal is that he will stop the wedding without killing anybody, and she has to give 3 kisses in exchange. But the kisses aren't to him because he has this thing where any girl he kisses will die. So she's not going to kiss him, but he's going to say, okay, you have to kiss this person, and then she has to do it. And that's the deal that they make. So she agrees to it and finds herself, of course, in a whole bunch of trouble because of this deal that they made. Overall, I think I liked Caraval a little bit better, but if you liked Caraval, then you'll probably like this one. It has very similar writing style, lots of emphasis on romance and drama and the clothing, and we also get exploration of a part of the world that we haven't yet been to, as well as more information and more depth on Jax, the Prince of Hearts. I will say I was hoping for a little bit more from our main character, Evangeline. I think after Tella, I was expecting Evangeline to be a little bit spunkier. However, I think she is interesting, and I'm excited to see where the rest of the series goes. I don't know if this is supposed to be a duology, trilogy, but I'm definitely excited to check the rest out, and overall, it was an enjoyable read. After that, I read Super Late Bloomer by Julia Kaye. This is basically a collection of comic strips, like that are autobiographical about this woman's journey through her transition. She's a trans woman, and so it basically just follows some of her day-to-day life type stuff. I saw this in a used bookstore and I decided to check it out and pick it up. I thought the art style was cute. It was really fast because it's mostly just comic strips, so I read it in, a couple of hours, something like that. It's sort of like a journal done through comic strips. Overall, I enjoyed it, and I would recommend it if you want to know more about what the trans experience is like. Then I read Beyond the Black Door by A.M. Strickland. It's about this girl, Kamome, and her ability to soul walk, which is basically to walk into this, it's called the Nahim in the book. It's like the dream manifestation of somebody's soul. So it's like a house that they have inside of their dreams, but most people don't have the ability to see them or to walk between them, but Kamome does. But everyone that she goes to has this mysterious black door that seems wrong to her when she sees it. Every single one has it there somewhere, and when she's little, her mom warns her to never, ever open the black door. So you know what's gonna happen. I thought this was a perfectly fine fantasy book. I don't really have any major complaints. I didn't think it was particularly stand out or anything like that. Kamome was a fine lead, good world building. I just didn't feel super yeah about it. It was fun. It was good. I did like a lot of the representation in it of various gender identities and sexualities. There's this really great scene where they're explaining what we would basically call spectra of gender identities and sexualities. I really liked that part, especially because it was done through moon phase metaphor. I think if you're interested in that kind of thing, then I would definitely pick it up. Our main character is asexual. So if you want more of that kind of representation, then I would recommend this. It was also fairly twisty. It did have some surprises. There were definitely a couple of times when I was like, I know where this is going, and then I was wrong. So that was pretty neat. I did think it was going to be an urban fantasy, so I was pretty surprised when I started reading it and I found out that it's actually a second world fantasy, which basically just means it takes place in an entirely fictional world rather than in our world. For some reason, I thought it was going to be based here being the Earth that we know. but that didn't really take away or add to my enjoyment either way. It was just kind of a little surprise that I had. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that one. Then I read Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Seanan Maguire. I really enjoyed it. I breezed through it really quickly, partially because it is so short. It's like 180 pages, I think. Yeah, about 180, 190. I really loved it. This is the second book in the Wayward Children series, but you can read them in any order. I read that one first because that's what Murphy Napier suggested. So I was interested in giving that, reading order a shot. I don't want to give too much away because it is such a short book, but basically it's about a pair of twins who go to a magical world, kind of like Narnia, except in this case, the magical world that they go to is full of vampires and mad scientists. So I ended up reading this pretty close to Halloween, and it was accidentally a perfect Halloween read. I also read Every Heart a Doorway by the same author. It's the first book in the Wayward Children series, and it kind of sets up for the rest of the series. I enjoyed that one too. It also felt a little bit Halloween-y, just because it has kind of like dark academia type vibes. It takes place at a boarding school for children who have gone to these magical worlds and come back and are having trouble adjusting. Definitely really enjoyed both of those books. I have a more in-depth review for those two coming out pretty soon. And overall, I am super excited to continue reading the Wayward Children series. Definitely highly recommend. And the last book I read in the month of October was the first volume of Witch Hat Atelier by Kamome Shirahama. I've had this sitting on my shelf for a long time because I've been waiting for the exact right moment to bring it out because it is just so cute and so fun. I love the art style. It's so beautiful. I love it. The first volume was great. I guess I'll tell you what it's about. It follows Coco, who is a little girl who's like obsessed with magic. She loves it. She always has loved it. And then our story kind of starts when a wizard comes to visit the sewing and linens shop that she and her mom work at. She sees the wizard do a spell, and she actually copies him and does a spell herself, which has some really unfortunate consequences. Now, in order to fix those consequences, she has to go live with the wizard and learn spellcraft herself. I absolutely adored it. Like I said, the art is so beautiful. I like the cast of characters so far. This guy on the back, Quifrey, I think is how you pronounce it. Kifrey, maybe? He's the witch that she sees doing spells. I think I said wizard before, but they don't call them that. Everybody is a witch, regardless of gender. I'm excited to get more of Coco. I really like her, cheerful but kind of obstinate sort of personality. We're introduced to some of the other witches who also live and learn in the Atelier. Most of them are pretty nice and welcoming to Coco, but there is one who is going to be, I think, some kind of a rival. She's very, standoffish. I really like her. I am so excited to see more of her character and the problems that she introduces to the story. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, I have not been able to find the third volume. So I have volume 2 and then 4 and 5, but I don't have volume 3. So I'm kind of holding off on reading volume 2 until I can get volume 3, since manga are so quick to read. I don't want to get to the end of volume 2 and then not have the next one, even though I'm kind of doing that with the first one. Either way, I'm waiting on that. This was just a so far, really cute, wholesome, funny, and beautiful manga. I definitely highly recommend it for something a little bit palate cleansy, sweet, and soft. If you want something just fun, magic times to a cross of Harry Potter and Studio Ghibli, that's the feeling that this gives me. And that was everything I read in October, but I was still definitely in a mood for manga. So in November, I went to the library and checked out Tsubasa, which is a series that I started reading when I was in high school, but there's this thing that happens halfway through, and I learned about it, and I got really mad. And so I stopped reading it. But now that it's been an undisclosed amount of time since high school, I decided to start reading it again and to actually finish it this time. So that was all that I read throughout November, was the entirety of the Tsubasa series. I read it in the omnibus version, which basically has like 3 volumes in one bigger volume, if that makes sense. So it's like 3 altogether. I read all of it this way. So the version that I read had a total of 10 omnibus volumes, but I believe there's about 30 regular manga volumes in the series overall. So it's not really that long. It also goes really quickly, like I said, because it's a manga. I'm not going to get super in-depth about where the plot goes or anything like that. I plan on doing eventually a spoiler-filled deep dive into it, but I'm definitely going to want to reread it and take really detailed notes before I do that. So for now, just kind of the overview. So Tsubasa is written by Clamp, which is a pretty well-known manga writing group in Japan. There are like several artists and writers there. They're probably most well-known here in the States for Cardcaptor Sakura. You might have seen that as an anime. I think it was just called Cardcaptors, but they have like a ton of other series. And what this one is about is this Princess Sakura. They like reuse her here, but she's like a different version of her. So there's Princess Sakura, she's one of our main characters, and then there's Xiaoran, who would be similar to Li Xiaoran from the Cardcaptor series. And what happens is the Kingdom of Clow, where Princess Sakura and Xiaoran are from, it is attacked by a bunch of mysterious figures, and then all of Sakura's memories turn into feathers and fly away throughout the multiverse, essentially, which is very bad for her. If she doesn't have her memories, then she will die. And also she won't have her memories, which is also bad. Xiaoran, who is her childhood friend, is transported with her to meet a woman called the Space-Time Witch, Yuko. There, Yuko gives them the ability in the form of a cute little... It kind of looks like a Pokemon, but its name is Makona, and Makona can carry them across worlds so that they can traverse all these worlds and get those missing feathers back. Joining them is a sort of lighthearted magician named Fi, who's always cracking jokes and being silly, and also an extremely serious, moody ninja named Kuragane. Fi wants to stay away from his home world, and Kuragane wants to get back to his home world. So for that reason, they are both sent with Xiaoran and Sakura to traverse the worlds, Fi in hopes of never finding his homeworld again, and Kuragane in hopes of stumbling across his own and getting to stay there. In exchange for this, they each have to give away their most prized possession. Kuragane gives away a magical sword that he has. Fi gives away it's like a magical marking that he has. We get more backstory about why these things are so important later. And then Xiaoran has to give away his relationship with Sakura, which basically means that Sakura, no matter how many memories they find that belong to her, Sakura will never ever remember him as her childhood friend, which is unfortunate because even in the first volume, there's clearly a lot of love between them. Sakura wants to confess her feelings to Xiaoran before this whole thing happens, and he obviously reciprocates, which you can tell because his most prized possession is the relationship that he has with her. So I actually started reading this series in high school and I quit because I found out about something that happens about halfway through and it made me mad. But I didn't get to that point and read it. I just heard about it from somebody else and I kind of misinterpreted how it was going to be carried off. So I decided to give it another chance and I am so glad that I did because I loved it so much. So basically the first half is just them traipsing across worlds and having a good time exploring different realities, getting those feathers back, helping Sakura get back on her feet. And then the second half, I'm not going to spoil, but wherever you think this story is going, you're probably wrong because this story goes for so many whoop, just kidding, this is the direction now. So it starts off on this course of we're going to get Sakura's feathers back. And then it becomes completely something else. And I really liked it. I adored it. I think all of the twists were carried off pretty well. I have to say, after having finished it, I am still a little bit confused about something. So I'll definitely be going for a reread of the overall series, especially that second half, because like there's a lot of stuff that happens in there. That would probably be my only complaint, that I would have preferred a little bit more time spent on certain things in order to really clarify what is happening. But overall, I absolutely loved the series. I love all the characters. I love it when we get into their backstories. And yeah, it was just a super good time. If you like exploring lots of different worlds, or if you are a fan of Kingdom Hearts, then I would highly recommend this series to you. I also think it'll be really enjoyable for people who are not fans of Kingdom Hearts, so if you hate Kingdom Hearts, I still think this would be good. But if the thing that you hate about Kingdom Hearts is its complicated storyline, then I'm gonna say this would probably not be the series for you. However, I love that stuff, so I adored it. It also crosses over with another series, which I believe is just pronounced Holic, even though it looks like the title should be XXX Holic, and that centers around Yuko, the space-time witch, who makes deals and has all these magical items in this little shop, and is an important character throughout Tsubasa, but she features more heavily, I think, in Holic. I read some of that in middle school as well. I do intend on picking that back up probably when I do my reread of Tsubasa, so I can get that crossover goodness. However, it's not required that you read both of them. It just kind of like fills out certain things if you read both, from what I understand. I am going to be taking a little bit of a break from Clamp though, just because their storylines are so like careening that I have to, take a little bit of a breather, read some other stuff. Then when I'm done with that breather, I'm definitely gonna do my deep dive on that. I feel like Tsubasa would be especially fun to read with a couple of friends, so that when each of the reveals kind of happens, you can get together and be like, oh my gosh, that was so intense. But even if you don't have any friends that want to read it, I still highly recommend it. I think it's a lot of fun. The art is beautiful, if a little bit too beautiful and kind of overdone sometimes. Still, I think it's really fun, and if nothing else, you'll probably enjoy a lot of the humor in the first half, even if the second half is not really your thing. And that was everything that I read in the months of October and November. So I hope you enjoyed hearing about all of that. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and have a great night, universe!